by your email.
And the
Sorry,
webinar is now being live streamed, by the way. So anything you say can and will be forever
used against me in a corner
archived.
block. Okay, great.
This will go down on my permanent record.
Yes,
And
and the
sorry,
webinar is now being live streamed, by the way. So can and will be forever
used against me in a corner block. Okay, great.
This will go down on my permanent record.
Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
and sorry.
And I am closing that out. Okay. Yeah, no more echoes. Thank you. Okay, cool. Hey, what's up, Darren? Will, how you gentlemen doing today? Good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
I am doing well. Nice to see you all. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. It's a good topic. This is the topic. Everyone wants to know about this.
I know, exactly, exactly. I mean, and anybody who says they figured it out, well, I don't know. What do you think about people who say they figured this topic out? By the way, everybody, the topic that we're here to talk about today is AI and local SEO. What you need to know. Where are you going to go? So, I don't know. What do you guys think about AI experts? Actually, let's start there.
Yeah. Well, an expert is someone who calls themselves an expert. So, so I guess that's what I'd say about most of them. We're all, like you said at the beginning, we're all still figuring it out, right? So I do appreciate the self-proclaimed experts because when you give yourself that moniker, then you're probably testing, trying, learning. You really kind of dove in and you're like, this is my thing. So I like to follow them. I like to listen to them and hear what they have to say, but take most of what they say with a grain of salt. But I don't know. That's what I think about the experts.
I mean, our interesting local SEO has been interesting over the last 3 years, right?
Yeah,
We've had Lily Ray, we've had Mary Haynes,
right.
those two jumped in head first, right?
Yeah.
Uh, when AI really, when ChatGPT really rolled around, and um, and they've been doing a lot of testing, beating things up, giving people news and everything of that nature. But then there's people like myself and you and Will, right? We've all been in the background too, kind of kicking around and going, AI and local, it's not that big of a deal at the moment.
Hmm.
Oh, wait a minute, until last year when it did become a big deal.
Yeah. It's starting. It's starting to happen. Where, George just posted, I think 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago, about a really big that one you saw, right? So it's like, it's creeping in. We're gonna start feeling the impact. And so it does make you wonder, what do we have to change in our strategy? What do we have to do differently than we were doing before? And I think that's the real question on most people's mind.
Yeah, I think though also it's more important as to what don't we have to change, right?
Totally. Yeah, the fundamentals for sure. What do we have
Because
to add is maybe a better way to put it. What's additional?
it's the augment. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Add augment. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, I think that I mean, well, two things. I want to go back to that whole AI SEO expert thing, because that is in my LinkedIn
We
title.
have one with us right
Yeah,
now.
Yes,
yeah.
we
Is
are.
there an
So,
AI expert in
Bow
the
down
room with us
before
now?
you.
right, right. So I want you all to recognize that that is not ironic when I have it there. Um, but and I feel okay making that claim since I
Yeah,
teach the SMX GEO masterclass, even though
there
I'm
you
trying
go.
to talk them out of
Yeah.
GEO as an acronym. But it's really, I mean, it's fun times, right? Because it's only been the last couple of days, literally, where I'm seeing AI overviews take over what
Yeah.
used to be map packs. So the map pack has maintained its prominence from 2006 or 7 when we first started abusing it until now. And so now you got to think about the how it shows or doesn't show in the AI mode. And what's this is where, like, I think there's two sides to this discussion, right? One is the human user interface, right? And I don't think that the tools and tactics that you use for that have changed much. You just have to double down on some of the things that you should have been doing all along, like content syndication and being in all of the places that the AI machines are looking.
Sure.
But the piece that is, I think, going to bite a bunch of people is the machine layer.
Hmm.
Um, because because there's, and I feel this more and more. And I was telling Ben before we started that I've spent the last couple of weeks down the claw hole, um, not the clawed hole, but the claw hole. And I think that when people start moving more and more to tools like OpenClaw and the more
Yeah.
consumer-facing versions of those, the the web isn't going to be a part of it except as a search layer for the machines. So it's both sides of it, right? Yeah, keep doing what you've been doing to support the human findability and to be in all the places that all the machines are looking, like the Reddits and Instagrams and citation sites like, Darren helps you get into, but also get a lot more serious about exposing the data that's needed by the machines to be able to help with the decision making.
Yeah, actually, I wrote a recent on that note. I wrote a recent article on LinkedIn, and it's kind of like peering way around the corner, of where things could go. And you just said it right there, where basically the web is more of an information layer more than anything else.
Yep.
Things being done through agents, and things like your Google business profile may just actually become more of a trust signal than anything else. And I kind of postulate on the fact that, we had PageRank back in the day, right? And that was an invisible signal. It only ran on the servers over at Google until they gave us the PageRank bar, and then they took that away. But maybe, just out of curiosity, what do you think about trust being the ranking factor in the future? The trust that the LLMs have in your entity or in you, basically.
I'll
You know,
share with you one of my favorite quotes of all time.
Please.
In business, the most important thing is sincerity. If you can fake that, you've got it made. That's what I think about the trust question, right? Is that the you can do all of the things that make you appear trusted. I mean, how many times have we seen our clients come up against other sites that have like fake EEAT? They've created LinkedIn profiles for fictitious people just so that they can be out in front of search. And so I don't think, I mean, like, I think the appearance of trust may be a ranking factor, but I don't think like what is trust? I'm firmly convinced. I'd spent a whole day last week speaking to entrepreneurship classes at Tulane in New Orleans, where I live, and I what I said to those students is what I firmly believe, which is that we are now in a zero trust world. If you're not close enough to pinch the source, you should not believe it.
Right.
Yeah, that's really valid with the way AI is making us distrust everything. I think that the thing that's really powerful in the future and now today is brand signal more so than trust. How strong is your brand? How strong is the signal of your brand on the internet? Are you present in all the places? Are other people citing you? I feel like that is really so it's really like brand strength, brand signal is going to be more valuable than trust, specifically because of what Will said. It's like, what is trust? It's really hard to trust anything right now.
Exactly. And that's why, when we're talking about AI and, what's changing, what's not changing, the fundamental principles of SEO from 30 years ago still apply to this very day. The
Yep.
one thing, of course, there's always been a separate, online reputation management type of company, and they were focused mainly on PR and getting you on blogs and stuff like that. Well, now reputation is everything, really, when it comes to getting yourself found in AI answer engines, basically. And to your point, Will, I remember when we were at PubCon 2.5, almost 3 years ago, I had this idea. And the idea was, and I'm not sure if we discussed this or not, but Marie and I definitely discussed this. And the idea is okay, what if we could spread enough misinformation in trusted sources to make it true and believable to the answer engines, to the
Mhm.
LLM. We didn't actually end up doing it, but
There was
in
there was an Ahrefs article in the last 3 to 4 months
Yeah.
where they did exactly that. They created a completely fictitious brand and flooded the zone and were able to show up in all of the places as if it was real. So this is to my point of like, and I think Darren's got it right. It's not about trust, it's about brand signals. So if you can manufacture a sufficiency of signals, then you will likely win.
exactly until somebody comes and balances out those signals.
I feel like in an AI world, this is something that's really creeping into my brain lately. In a pre-AI world, there were rankings. There were Google's results, and they were relatively stable-ish. Like they varied quite a bit, I know,
Right,
but
right.
it was like if you were in the top five, you were usually in the top five. Someone would search something, right? These days, especially in the AI results, they're so freaking randomized that like, what is it? What is winning in this? So it's like appearing slightly more often. It does feel to me like in the pre-AI world, it was like the rich get richer. The
Mhm.
more SEO'd get more leads, more strength, more visibility. And it almost feels like the playing field is a bit more leveled out. The AIs are willing to show anybody in their five recommended businesses when someone puts in a query for like, hey, can you recommend a drain cleaning company in Denver? And so, you run that query 100 times and you're going to see 70 different businesses in the top five. So it's like, it's just so randomized now that visibility, certainly there are things you can do to amplify your signal, but at least you get a chance to play.
Yeah, I've had this conversation in a couple of different settings with normies, that they don't understand that LLMs are not search,
Right.
Hmm.
right? Search was entirely grounded in the world of websites. And so you could fact check every single listing in the SERP, right?
Hmm.
Just by clicking on the link and going there.
Yep.
But given the probabilistic nature of LLMs, you don't know where they're getting their data from. And
Hmm.
the this was something that was kind of mind-blowing when I was at the gym and my talking to my trainer and his wife, who's also a trainer there, and somebody else. And I was like, you all realize that the answer is made up on the spot. It's
Hmm.
just it's
Every
just
time.
what is the statistically most likely next word or next pixel or whatever. It's
Yes.
not about any foundation in truth unless it's RAG, and even then it's retrieving the data and then
And then making it
generating on
up.
top of and yeah, and then making it up. So to normies, this is just like mind blowing. They're like, "What do you mean it's not search?" I'm like, "It's not search. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have the same expectation of truthiness there."
But
I
it's
have a
also
question
like
for you,
themselves.
Will, as our resident AI expert.
Yes,
Um,
thank
Tell
you.
me how this works. So we know
It,
that that's true. It's what is the most likely next word? It's like Rand Fishkin likes to call it spicy autocomplete.
Yeah.
And so what is the when you if it's always the most likely next word, wouldn't it follow the same path so frequently? Why do we get such massive variation? And it's like it's different every time I can run a search, look out the window for 5 seconds, then run it again, I get totally different results.
Yeah.
Why is it so variable?
Well, I think that there are some like immutable truths, right? Like, why did the chicken cross the Atlantic, right? You're not going to have that. But there might be 100 variations of, Will Scott, AI SEO expert. And
Hmm.
so in that context, it's that there may be, and this is the whole like, I don't get into the whole vector space discussion like Mike King and those guys. But the likelihood is that there may be three or four almost right answers or near correct answers. And
Hmm.
what's interesting is not that the next word might be just like slightly different, but that with the what it does to the following words, right? Because if it's looking at all that's come
Mm.
before,
You
that's
change one little variable early on in the process,
exactly
and then it completely changes the whole path.
right.
and if
One
you think
one
about it,
degree of difference, one degree of difference isn't a big deal in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
It is, however, a big deal, when you're cruising the Pacific Ocean.
Yep.
exactly. And if you think about it, right? I mean, LLMs actually started all back in the day with, with like semantic search, for instance, right? Giving meaning to a word and the branching meaning from that. And to your point, I mean, you start here, you start your query, it starts to branch off and branch off and branch off and branch
Hmm.
off, continually branching off.
Right.
Uh, there is grounding, I think, data in local search. For instance, Gemini is very good with AI mode with the local search because it's using Google Maps data, right? So it's pulling in the description from your GBP, the reviews from your GBP, of course, your category, all of that. So that's pretty grounded, and it can look around and it can say, okay, if you think in the mind of the LLM, quote unquote, oh yeah, so the entity over in our Google Maps database looks pretty good. It's got a 4.9 rating. It's really decent. The reviews say they're a good company. Oh wait, but there's this Yelp review over here. This is really shitty. Okay, and there's this Glassdoor review over here. It's pretty good. And it has to weigh, it's way in a quote, weighing all of this information, but really just branching out logically. So that's
Mhm.
why sometimes something may just like fall off. So you might not see it on your list, basically.
I
Well, and
accept your explanations.
the challenge is not for us, right? Because we know enough to smack the side of the box, right? And say, hey, are you sure about that? Can you show me citations to go with that, right?
Yeah.
But it's the people who have grown so accustomed to the the primacy of search that are expecting that same level of accountability when they move to these new surfaces that I really worry for. Like what was the one quote that everybody jumped on, like thickening your pasta sauce with glue, right? Was one of those answers that was given. Um,
Right.
and
Some about eating
so
rocks too. You got to eat some rocks.
yeah, I mean, so all of these are like all of these are challenges for the people who don't know better, or or don't realize necessarily the gravity of their situation, right? Like the your money or your life stuff is that
Hmm.
those are getting answered by AI overviews, and as we know, they're not search. They're probabilistic. They're not deterministic.
Right.
Yep.
But the problem comes in is that, as you say with normies, right? Which, at the end of the day, that's our end product, these people coming to our
Right.
clients, is that AI overviews in general, let's just call them AI overviews, whatever right now, the answers in general are so confident that the average consumer just believes it because of that confidence level. We all saw this years ago, right?
Yeah, totally.
And we were just like, why is it being confident? That's really wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, that guy's dead. He's been dead for a long time. You know, um,
I know
what
you guys are old enough to remember the show Cheers, right?
Hmm.
So I call Chat GPT the Cliff Clavin of search, right? It's going to give you an incredibly authoritative,
That's
absolutely
completely wrong.
confident,
That's a great
and
analogy.
completely wrong answer, right? And that's and but people don't get that. So I think it's an interesting challenge. But I mean I feel like local, when we talk about grounding in the context of AI, I mean like local is grounded
Hmm.
physically in reality and
Hmm.
therefore hopefully um, maintain some of its integrity for a minute or two.
So far it has. And that's the thing where it's like, AI is slowly creeping into local, but I've always felt like, well, informational search is going to get decimated by AI because
Oh, it absolutely is. It
there's no
already.
need to go to a website. The
Yep.
AI will give you the answer.
Yep.
But in local, people need to explore the businesses, and that's where the foundation of Google Business Profiles will continue to be very valuable. The strategies, the tactics, the management of your online footprint, specifically on Google and on the rest of the common sources that AIs and search engines are looking to, that remains fundamental. And that's part of the SEO work that we're going to definitely be continuing to do.
And I believe that the GBP, again, in the future, as we move closer and closer to this, single pane of glass, quote unquote, that the GBP is going to continue to act as like this ledger of
Hmm.
trust, this ledger of data, where, far-flung thought out here is like, maybe the number of suspensions that you has historically comes into this ledger of trust, right?
Mhm.
Things of that nature. And, I think what we haven't discussed yet is the future of going on to a different subject, the future of a zero-click search environment.
Yep.
Okay. we've touched on it a little bit, which is where websites all of a sudden are now just these repositories of information. Maybe even there is no website, quote unquote, anymore, right? Maybe it's you're putting data into some other cloud type of area. You
Mhm.
know, maybe that's a little bit too far flung in the future, but it's possible.
So Zero Click Rand just published something about that the other day. Just talking about the diversity, right? So diversifying all of your presence. He talks about how, 10, 15 years ago, he would say you must own your channels. You should be directing people to your own website or to something, yeah, just basically your own website. It's like owned place where all of your data is.
Yep.
Now, that strategy, he says you should not do that. You should definitely be spreading on all of the places because that's where you're going to be discovered. Discovered on social, on forums, on Reddit, on YouTube. These things become really critical for every business. And so that's a shift. Like, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would really mostly be focusing on your website, your Google business profile, and then I don't know, this thing called link building, which was always some variety of BS that we would do. And then, of course, citations.
There's a new version of BS link building that I'll tell you guys about in a second.
Okay, I'm ready. You can just tell
What,
me
what-
now.
okay, okay.
Do
So,
it.
so this is, and so what's really funny is that some of these, so as you probably know, there has been just an explosion of AI tracking tools, right?
Yes.
And and so we have a really meaty blog post on the Search Influence blog where we're updating it on a monthly basis with all the new stuff. And I started a newsletter on LinkedIn and in a newsletter platform called the Visibility Report, which is really just tracking all of that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and and now there is at least one company, and I'm sure there are more, who are doing the same kind of spammy link building outreach to get you citations for
Hmm.
AI. So instead of saying, give me a link, they say, hey, you've got this piece of content over here that ranks well for something that my client's interested in, and they'd like to be added to your piece of content, and we'll pay you a
Hmm.
couple $100.
It's like a
Right.
listicle. Like you'll go someone who's got a well-cited listicle and
Yep.
be like, "Hey, I'll give you
Yeah.
$200 if you
If you
add our
include me in it.
business in the
Thank
third
God,
position."
listicles are dying. Okay.
I
No,
know. Yeah,
don't,
this
but
is the
I mean,
thing.
this is what I like. I see this behavior, and I'm like, it's really a good thing that the Federal Trade Commission has been gutted because this is exactly the sort of what's the word? Um, undisclosed advertising that they've been coming out after
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
So for
You
these
could
guys, for the time being at least, since there is no enforcement, they're probably good.
But I'd say even if the FTC wasn't gutted, always been a ineffective agency. Like
That is true.
they're
That is
only
true.
going after like Walmart. We noticed you were doing this nefarious stuff. Here,
Yeah,
pay a $400 million fine. They're
right.
not going after the small business that is doing cold outreach to listicle sites and asking them to get
Yeah.
placed.
Yeah. So these guys are now this one company, and I can't recall their name, and I probably wouldn't dox them here anyway. But they're doing the same kind of spammy link building, cold outreach in support of
Yeah, makes sense.
citations, and they're not even like they're not even bothering to disguise the fact that they're doing it for pay. The first outreach email says, "And we'll
Yeah.
pay you $200," and it's
Okay.
like,
That's pretty bad.
wow.
Yeah.
That's
Well, you know what? I think that this is another reason why I have confidence in Google being the winner in the AI wars. Because Google has 20 years of spam fighting knowledge and systems, and they kind of
Yep.
know how to detect. Well, they're not great at it, as we all know. They're not
Right.
very good at it, but they at least have some sense of it. And so, like Lily had recently posted, these sites that were skyrocketing because of listicles are
Yep.
now
dying.
absolutely tanking. And so these shifts will continue to happen. And it's like a new era of spammy SEO because the LLMs have not really figured out how to identify spam and block it.
Well, they're not engineered to.
No,
Okay.
there,
So
and it
let's
actually would
figure
be
it
really
out.
hard to build that in. I think it's like a post process. You
Yeah.
get your result, then you got to pass through it,
It's
do
got to
some
go
kind of
through.
spam
It's got to
checks,
go
and then
through the gyrations basically in the Google's back end in a sense, right?
Mhm.
That has to really figure it out more than anything else, which it already does, like you said.
Technically, and I'd love to hear this from like from a real expert. I would love to understand how they manage indexing, right? Because we know that the
Yeah.
and to the point of I was I'm going to go a little deep here for a second, so forgive me. But this idea of how does Google know, right?
Yep.
Google knows because they have 57 copies of that page, right?
Yep. They've
And
seen the
so
history of it.
so if the 58th copy suddenly has a new block of text promoting a different business, that's a signal. Now,
Sure.
do they catch it or not?
That's
Who's
a
to say?
positive signal for that business.
Right. But it's but it's one of those things where if you've got something that's completely static all along, and then and I we've had clients, way back in the day who got nasty grams saying it looks like you're selling links because a new link appeared on a page that wasn't there before, even when it was relevant. Um, and I'm not going to say they were selling links per se, but there may have been some exchange
What do
of
you mean a
goodwill.
nasty gram? Like a manual action?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
definitely can get that.
Yep. And
interesting.
I mean, you got to hope that it's only that one page, not the whole site.
Hmm.
Uh, irony of ironies. I own the domain name barnacleseo.com, and it
As you
currently,
would.
yeah, and it currently has a manual action, and I just don't have the
What?
time to fix it. Yeah.
What?
So this is the funny thing is the manual action is actually for scaled content abuse.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, but I literally personally created every page of content on here. There's no scaled content abuse, but
You're just so prolific.
I, well, it's I
They
think it's
think it must be automated.
I think it's the domain they're coming after, really. They're just not happy about it. So
Sure.
uh yeah,
Wow, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is like the what is the beyond the getting greater surface area, right, for your brand,
Yep.
so that you have more exposure, so that you're more likely to be in the selection set.
Mhm.
Um, what are the signals that the new AI machines and Google's AI machines can be looking at as an indication of real sincerity, if you will?
We should do it. We should all name a signal and then discuss each signal.
Hmm.
Ben,
And
I feel like
I
we're
would
off
say that,
track. We're having a nice fireside
but we are, but
chat.
we're not. We are, we're not, but we're not. Believe it or not, we're about to get into KPIs. We're just going to come around to all this.
Okay.
But to your question, I mean, I think that the strongest signal right now with answer engines is really cooperative data.
Yeah.
Much data can be corroborated between certain types of trusted sources, and in some cases, even some unknown sources, right? Because you do see those pop up in citations every once in a while.
Hmm.
You see some really good local sources, which you'd be like, huh, I didn't think that actually was 100% reliable, but I guess maybe it might be. So I would say that's number one, is those cooperative sources. I am actually in the camp, Will, of the kind that I do like to look at all the citations that are forming the data, and I
Hmm.
like to dream about which ones of those citations could be basically augmented to help manipulate those signals, but in a truthful way, not in a insincere way.
Yeah, something we've been doing, and this is I've having spent far too much time playing in Claude Code and now in OpenClaw. The What's interesting to me is content syndication, and this is something that Ross Simmons has talked about for a long time. But if you've got a good piece of content, if you can slice it and dice it into 20 other pieces of content that are each individually suited to the platform or medium in which you're deploying them, I mean, that's how you get to ubiquity. So as long as they're unique and as long as they're appropriate to the platform and as long as they're not um, I think wholesale manufactured by the machines, but instead based on some piece of real content that you've created um, from your own, human emotional brain. Um, then I think it's a good idea. And it's so easy to do now with the AI machines.
Sure.
Regarding the corroborating data, one of the things that I've been thinking about with LLM-based business discovery that's different from traditional SEO is traditional SEO has this concept of domain authority, link equity. These things played a role in search. So like, okay, there's 1,000 possible businesses I could return here. There's a 1,000 possible references that I could look at as for this corroborating data to say which businesses are more prominent. It feels like in the world of LLM, there isn't a concept of equity or authority, the internal linking, like measuring links and link graphs. It feels like it's all just content based. And the LLM training data has been trained on the whole internet. And then there's the RAG process, which of course that's where the domain authority might come in. But just like in the like, what sources are corroborating this information, the authority of those sites doesn't seem to matter. You'll often see LLM cite some like totally obscure thing. And it's like, why this? Why this really bizarre, small, little rinky-dink website
Yeah.
is now being cited as a source. And so to your point, Will, it does feel like it's just a spray and pray. Like the more surfaces your business is mentioned on, the better, because it's almost like a numbers game. And so that
Yeah.
whole like just multi-distribution on every possible channel feels
Yeah.
very important for AI search in at least today's AI search.
And the thing that we're preaching really heavily is the idea of the idea of the semantic triple, right? Making
Yeah.
sure that whenever possible, your brand is co-occurring with
Yes.
the things you do,
Yeah.
or bringing it back to local, the place you do those things. And if you can be, I don't know, Mike's Tire Shop in Detroit, Michigan, right?
Hmm.
Um, or Mike's is a tire shop in Detroit, Michigan for the full semantic triple expression of it.
Yep.
If you can get that message across all of these surfaces, whether it's your website or social sites or Google Business Profile posts, right? Then you are starting to affect the probability of
Hmm.
the mention including you.
Yeah.
And so that's where to me, like I've been doing in addition to the spammy citation outreach, I also, as you guys do, I'm sure, get the dozen or so emails each day asking if I want to buy some nice juicy links. And so
Yeah.
and so what I've started doing is I've been going back to them and I'm like, I, I love this. Love you people. Please bring me more. But the next time you send me one of these spreadsheets, make sure that it includes whether or not that website is cited in the AI services and whether or not it gets real traffic. And it's
Yeah.
shocking. It's shocking how few, and I don't know if you guys,
Respond.
no, actually they do, but it's shocking how few of them are actually really cited. So,
Right.
so in some of the tools we've built, we can effectively query the AI machines and say, hey,
Yep.
does this page exist, right?
Right.
And if it doesn't, it's not going to help it's not going to help you from a citation building perspective. Um, and if you look at, I don't know if you guys know the marketplace iCopify, but it's basically like a guest post marketplace where
Hmm.
you can get guest posts for as little as 9.99.
There's a
So
bunch of them. Yeah.
yeah, wish I had my affiliate link in here. Um, but the point is, when you dump a sheet of a bunch of the sources that they're going to, and
Yeah.
you run it through the machines to see, am I really cited by AI? It's like 1 in 50 are actually
Well, these
cited.
are all like these PBN sites. They're such
Totally.
trash, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
it's all
private blog network
worse
for
than
anyone.
Yeah.
worse than trusted. Yes, exactly. As you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, I wonder how fast these companies would stop peppering us with these emails and anybody else with these emails, if you simply replied back and said, this is your one chance, one more email, I'm putting you on blast all over Reddit, Glassdoor, and everything, talking about your strategy, because that would also be a poison pill for any LLMs, basically.
So yeah, if you believe that they actually have the ability to gauge sentiment, um,
Yeah.
at some level, I think, all press is good press. So it's the co-occurrence
It's
of
going to
both
help them more than
citation,
hurt them.
right? So maybe somebody, because
Oh, it would help.
people don't actually do that second level investigation. All they see is like the thing I asked about and the brand. Back
Yeah.
to the zero click challenge. This is why everybody's seeing an increase in branded search. It's because they get the exposure in the AI surfaces, and then somebody goes back to Google and types in their brand.
Sure, of course. Absolutely. So let's talk about that really quickly. I mean, if we want to get into a structured thing, let's talk about KPIs, right?
Hmm.
We all know this is what our customers all love and never understand. However, in this world of AI, I mean, maybe they can start to understand some things. But
Yeah.
as we all know, all of these pieces of software that are coming out now,
Yeah.
they're great for the moment, but the next moment they're probably not great. I mean, what are you all training your customers on?
Can I go first on
Yeah.
this one? I feel like I have a base idea of like how I think I should be tracking AI visibility.
Okay.
And I think that Will knows more about this than me and can fill in a bunch of gaps. So I'm going to start with the base, what I think is important. First of all, I don't think that the AI tracking tools like Profound and stuff are worth the money. I feel like because of the randomized probabilistic nature of AI search, you're not getting great data. There is for sure this thing that you can do where it's like, if you run the search 1,000 times, how often is my brand mentioned? And then based off of that, I can get a sense of visibility. Is it mentioned once out of 1,000 or is it mentioned 700 out of 1,000 times? That's a much stronger brand. The LLMs think that brand is stronger. There is certainly a metric there. I don't like that metric because I think of the environmental impact of those 1,000 searches, especially if you're running them once a week or whatever your frequency is. And so this feels not awesome. And I actually think there might be a better way. And the better way, in my opinion, is the number one way is you ask your customers how did they hear about you. You do that either on the forum or you do it on the phone. Whenever you get a new customer, how did you hear about us? And you track that. There's no better metric. It's perfect. That's going to tell you. And actually, we've been doing it for our new local ranking grid software. And I can tell you it is 13%, say ChatGPT.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, right? It's like,
Yeah.
wow, we're
Yep.
getting a decent amount of leads from ChatGPT. YouTube is our number one. Our newsletter is our number two. And I think web search is three and ChatGPT is four. So it's really cool to see that data. So now what you can do is if you were tracking that data and you're tracking it over time, you can watch those numbers change month after month, week after week. And maybe ChatGPT goes to 12. Maybe we start to see Claude trickle in a little bit, right? So this is, I think, the number one metric. This is real. How did that customer decide to contact us? The other one is you can track it in Google Analytics. You can build a little dashboard. There's lots of people that are showing traffic from the various LLMs. I think that's useful data. You can track Search Console. So in Search Console, I like to look for any queries that are longer than 20 characters. Those are usually some kind of prompt. Um, Prompt or 20 words, I think. So those are prompts for LLMs. But I think because they're Search Console, they're only represented AI mode, AI overviews. So those are my main ways that I like to track LLM visibility. I feel like I've had another one, but I've forgotten it. So, Will, I'm ready for you to fill in the gaps. What else would you do to track AI visibility?
Well, I think those are a really good starting point. Another thing that I like to look at in Search Console is question related queries.
Yep. Oh
And
yeah,
if you
with
go,
why, when,
yeah,
how,
yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
if you go searching around, a bunch of people have published like a regular expression that you can put in
Yep.
your query filter
Queries.
in Search Console, and so you
Hmm.
can start to see. And what's really interesting, Darren, to your point of the length of the query, is that when you put those in there, what I'm starting to see more of, which makes pretty much my position is all analytics and tracking tools are wrong. It's just a matter of by what degree, right?
Hmm.
And and so what I'm starting to see is I believe some impact from the AI tracking tools because
Totally.
you'll see the same when you put in those question-based queries, you'll
Hmm.
see the same query 10 times
Oh, there
with
you
like
go.
one word different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exactly how a lot of them are working, is that they're trying to approximate the idea of query fan out, where
Hmm.
they're trying to get full coverage.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think that's one of the things that you can look at. I also love the human aspect of it. And we've seen that a few times where people will say, yeah, we found you on ChatGPT, but it's I think a lot of our clients are not necessarily as high volume as some of the local businesses that you work with. And so it's harder to get that piece in there. But the but what I really like is I really like to see it in the data. So if you've got, we use CallRail primarily, and
Hmm.
so we're able to see referral data coming through. And so whether or not we ask the question, when the phone rings or the inbox dings, as it were, the we can see with some level of certainty that the last touch attribution was one of those AI machines. Now,
You mean the
it's
URL, like the
the
source,
yeah, the referral
refer
source.
source?
Yeah,
Okay.
just like in analytics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's really helpful. The other metrics, and I do think that this is where like I have to accept that I don't rule the world. And in the AI tracking tools where they have the greatest utility is in competitive sets. So the raw numbers that you see relative to your brand are nowhere near as valuable as by comparison to others with whom you compete,
Hmm.
whether in real life or in
Hmm.
the SERPs. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of value is if I see that, for instance, we work with a global B2B SaaS company, and they have all sorts of folks like just nipping at their heels. And many of them do better in AI surfaces because they're creating the kind of content that they just lap up. This versus that, top
Hmm.
X lists, all that kind of stuff, which let's hope those see some decline. But and this is actually, I think, a decent answer for there's a question in the chat that's only to the hosts and panelists from Bill about, best way to show up in AI searches for a local business. And this is where I think we're going to see the resurgence of programmatic SEO, right? Which is, so for me, I'll use my own example, right? I'm in New Orleans. We're kind of like town, but there's a whole bunch of little towns around, right? So I want to have content around plumber in New Orleans,
Yeah.
plumber in Marrero, plumber
Hmm.
in Metairie, plumber in Kenner, right? Or
Semantic triples on those
yeah,
pages.
or uh Jack's Jack's Plumbing does water heater replacement in each of these locations. And so I think that
Hmm.
there's going to be a resurgence of that kind of stuff. And you're seeing it not so much in local, except for maybe, big money local like PI attorneys.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but you're definitely seeing it in the SaaS and the product space. And it's very much my brand versus their brand, and you do that 100 times. Um,
So
Zapier.
you would say you would use the AI tracking tools because of the competitive analysis data you get.
Yeah, and because you the next level, thank you, Darren, for bringing me back. The next level is that you can start to see the gaps. So the article that published on Search Engine Land this morning
Hmm.
from me
Hmm.
shows a process where I used Claude to connect to Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google Ads data
Yeah.
to find gaps between paid and organic.
Yeah.
The piece that I only alluded to in there was we've been using Scrunch now for, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Hmm.
And so we can connect to the Scrunch API and grab the actual prompt data too, right? And so we can see where do we have opportunities for content creation based
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
prompt gap analysis. So to me, it's less about like the tracking is only really valuable by comparison to your peers, but the data that you get out of those tools from a like workflow
Hmm.
perspective is what's really interesting.
I,
These, let me just say one quick thing, Ben.
yeah.
These feel like the promises of the tool. They are promising you to give you that visibility, that data that you want.
Yeah.
I have a hard time trusting what they give me back because it's of the probabilistic nature. It might tell me that your competitors are stronger in this area than you are, based on these queries that we ran and how the LLMs were returning these businesses instead of you. But then, well, how many times did you run it? Was it different a hundred times? Because it's so different. And so then it
Yeah.
might tell me you need to do this thing. But I'm like, do I really? Or was it all just randomized, man?
Well, and that's why you can't trust the snapshot, and that's why
Yeah.
we're going to be draining all of the lakes and rivers, right?
Exactly.
It's because you got to run it because you got to run it enough times to have confidence in the convergence of the data.
Sure.
Um,
You
and again, I'm not, look, I
know,
I'm not here to defend or assail the mega scalers, but the data's there if you want it.
Yeah. And I'm not here to attack them. I feel like it's like they're just questions. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I will say this, guys. It's like, when you're talking about, so we use it for the same, we use the tools for the same thing, right? Which to now to find gaps basically or opportunities. And while the queries that are being taken at the moment are a snapshot in time, which is very true, it's been true of ranking in general forever,
Forever. Yep.
right? So it's just one baseline point. However, the experiments that I've done over the years, and I'm saying years, but like let's just take a look 6 months. We take a look at a brand, we find out what queries their competitors are showing up in that they're not having any kind of branded notations in. You take a look at those citations, culminate all of that data together, then start creating content and maybe getting listed in places where you're not being mentioned, right? And what we've noticed is that over a 6 month period, if you measure that, you can actually obtain a consistent response every time you do the query. It just
Mhm.
takes time. It takes a long time to do, because you are basically doing kind of like reinforced training. There's some other stuff that you have to do along the way to make it even cement even further. But that's been our experience. So when we talk about KPIs, we educate our customers on the fact that, look, the data that we're giving you right now is a snapshot in time. And
Mhm.
you know what? We're not going to come back for a month, basically. And we're going to give you another snapshot in time. And if that snapshot looks a little bit better than the previous snapshot, fantastic. And we've been doing it pretty regularly like that, actually, and our customers understand it. But we also train them on things like Darren was saying, which is where are your leads coming from?
Mhm.
Right. And
Optimize.
I think that that's the open question for me is um, without a sufficiency of data, it does appear that the conversion rate is higher when they're coming from LLM search versus traditional search because of the fact that they've already worked to the top part of the funnel, and by the time they get to you, they're already at the conversion stage. Um, but I think it's time will tell whether that continues to be true once the machine layer is the kind of prevalent search modality.
Related to that, I do have my own internal data on conversion rate because I mentioned ChatGPT is actually number three. It's not number four. It's YouTube, our
Mhm.
newsletter, web search, ChatGPT, referral slash word of mouth, then Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn, right? So ChatGPT does drive 13% of our trial signups, but
Hmm.
only 7% of those convert, which is interesting. YouTube and the newsletter are converting at 16%, and web search is converting at 11%. And referral word of mouth, 12%. Facebook converts at 22% somehow. Yeah, so it's interesting data. LinkedIn converts at 20%. But yeah, ChatGPT in our data set does not convert based on the how did you hear about us question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder, I mean, like I think and Darren, I mean, to your credit, and I've said this to you before, your social media game is strong, right? You and your team do an
Thanks.
amazing job of putting out great content. And so I think anybody who has their first introduction to Whitespark through your
Hmm.
presence on social media is
Yep.
going to have a much higher degree of trust. And so when you think about the interface of ChatGPT, it's text, right? They
That's, I
don't,
think, totally it. And that's
yeah,
actually
yeah,
that is the directional advice for our clients going forward.
yeah.
Like, do what I'm doing. I know it's hard. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's the way. It's like what you talked about with Ross, like you make the content, you distribute it everywhere. And I
Yeah.
do feel like it's kind of the consulting, the advice, and the work and the hand holding we have to do for our clients going forward. That is really powerful.
Well, and another lesson that I think that folks could learn from you, Darren, is that you're video first, right? And
Yep.
by starting with video,
Yep.
your ability to move into those other mediums is so much more enabled than if you try to start from text and say, okay,
Hmm.
I'm going to take this text, I'm going to turn it into images, I'm going to turn it into podcasts, videos, whatever. It's
Yep.
nowhere near as compelling as what you do from that video first perspective.
Well, there's the authenticity of the video too. It cannot be disputed that this was AI generated. It's actually me. Maybe in the future there may be an
I say, I
AI
don't
version
know.
of Darren. I don't know, but uh,
Julian Goldie's AI avatar is pretty compelling.
really,
Yeah,
well, so
yeah.
far I think people. Anyways, but try to get the average plumber to make video content. It's freaking
Okay,
hard.
it's
It's
not.
so hard.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So it does present a problem for us SEO consultants going forward. How do we help our clients in this new world? I don't
Yeah,
have a question. I don't have the answer.
yeah.
No, I don't know the answer either. I mean, the only thing that I can come back to as an answer on that is something we've been trying to do for years, and that is to stop getting people to look at keywords, quote unquote, and start
Yeah.
looking at sales, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's been a 30-year battle that we still haven't won,
Hmm.
you know? So, but maybe, just maybe, when we start coming to zero-click search and single answers and things like that, maybe our customers will finally wake up and people will start to look at it and say, well, my sales increased by 30% this month. I think I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that the challenge for me in that, Venn, is the scalability of it, right? And it goes back to another one of my favorite quotes. This is how you can tell that I've reached a certain age, is that I speak in cliches. But another one of my favorites is from John Wanamaker, who was a department store magnate at the turn of the last century, and his phrase was, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. If only I knew which half,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Right.
And so that's the problem with that. That's the problem with that uh, trailing indicator check. That if you're only looking at sales, or you're only asking the question of how did you find us, whether in a form or with a human, then you're at the tail end of it. You don't know what
The
you
previous
don't know
thing.
what it is, right? You don't know what the whole of the stuff that influence, and this is where getting back to the zero click idea, it starts is like they may say that they found you, or your data may indicate that they found you in Google, but the reality is that they were influenced to go find you in Google from these AI surfaces.
Yeah.
And that's and that's where, to me, this idea of checking to see how do I fare amongst my competitors, and what are the things that I can do to affect that, is really useful.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we've got couple minutes before we are done. This has been an amazing conversation, both of you. Thank you for your time. Everybody, by the way, if you want to know where you can reach everybody that is here, you can find Will at searchfluence.com. And of course, you can find Darren not only all over YouTube and all over social media, but you can find him at whitespark.ca. And of course, for me, Ben Fisher, you can find me at steadydemand.com. And I think you can find us all on LinkedIn, if I'm right.
Yep.
Mhm.
And if you're wondering how an individual page on your site does in AI, one of the many tools that I've created with Claude over the last year and a half is an AI website grader. So if you go to ai-grader.searchinfluence.com, punch in a URL. I was smart enough to build the tool, but I wasn't smart enough to build conversion factors on it. So you can use it to your heart's delight. And I promise we won't follow up because there's no way for us to.
Ask Claude to add that. You can have that done this afternoon.
It's coming. It's coming. I just, like it's not the most fun thing I have on my plate, and so it just hasn't been done yet.
All
Yeah.
right, guys, really quickly, one action item that everybody you in the audience can action on this month to help them survive the AI apocalypse.
I would go with in your content on your key service pages, make sure you are hitting the main questions people are asking in the first paragraph of that page. That would be my number one thing. Because a lot of people will be like blah 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 in their first paragraph, and they don't get to the meat of it until like further down the page. I do think Dan Petrovich has done some really interesting research on that, showing how really when the RAG process is hitting and they're pulling all the pages, they're trying to limit the amount that they suck from your page. And so they're really looking at that first little bit, and they will disregard your page if if it's not really coming out of the gate strong. So that first sentence is critical. We're talking about semantic triples in there, answering the question, and really nailing it in the first paragraph. That's what I would say is my number one action item.
Fair enough, fair enough. I would say my number one action item goes back to kind of looking at the different queries that they're coming from some of these reporting tools,
Yeah.
looking at competitors and creating content, well, looking at the gaps basically, and then creating content that's going to address that information because at the end of the day, it's going to be good for the users who are doing searches and coming to your website anyway. So
Hmm.
it's just good marketing and the LLMs will pick up on that. What about you, Will? One thing.
Be ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do to put your brand and the things that you do in all of the places, all of the time, and never stop, the more likely it is that you're going to win.
Okay, well, follow-up question.
This is all the
I
time.
can do it. I can do it as White Spark. I can do it as Darren Shaw.
Yeah.
How do I get Joe the plumber to do it?
So the bad news is, well, I mean, okay, so bad news for, I don't know, is it bad news? The news is,
The news.
the news is you got to do it for them.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, first, Joe the plumber has to care. And then you have to help them get to where you are. And so we have another colleague who has a service where you go and you sit down with them for like, I don't know, an hour or two a month, and then they slice and dice that into all of the content that you could ever
And
want.
then they distribute.
And they distribute it. I
That's
can't,
the like SEO service of the future. I
yeah.
think that's really critical. Yeah.
Is
Well,
that and there's going to come a point in time where the video models are getting so good that I can create you an avatar. I can create you a spokesperson,
right.
Mhm.
and they can be your Darren Shaw.
I feel like it's a ways away, man. Just because any tiny hint of inauthenticity, any tiny hint that this was not actually Darren Shaw, I feel is dangerous for the brand, not beneficial for the
So,
brand.
Will, after this, we
Yeah.
need to go out and we need to grab all of Darren's content, feed
Make
it
a,
into
a
a
fake
claw
AI
box,
Darren.
feed
There-
it
There's
in,
there's there's enough of him out there that we can definitely fabricate a Darren.
yeah,
You
feed
know,
it
Deep fake.
into
at
something.
local U 10 years ago,
Just do it.
Darren couldn't make it to one, so we got a life-size poster of Darren. So this is
Yeah,
the
I
like
might cut
this is
out.
the AI version of that.
Doesn't
Is
that,
we
Right.
have
that poster still exists? Actually, you have that, don't you, Darren?
No, I think Carrie Hill's husband threw it in the garbage.
Really?
what up,
So,
bro?
That happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think Joy has one in her closet. Yeah. Joy has one in her closet. Every once in a while she opens the closet and it's like Darren Shaw jump scares her. Yeah.
That's not just a little stalkery now, is it?
I know.
That Joy has a life-size Darren in her closet.
Right on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool, guys. Thanks so much for coming today. I mean, this was a really great conversation. I mean, we had questions all queued up, and we didn't even touch one of them because guess
Oh,
what?
I know. You
We
did a
hit
good
them,
job of organizing those questions. But you know what? We did
hit them
touch on
all.
all those topics.
We touched on every
Yeah.
single one. I was like looking at the list as we're sitting here going, and I'm like, yep, we
Yeah.
talked about that. What are we going to do next? Oh, we haven't done this. Fine, we'll do that.
Yeah.
But that was fantastic. It was great. You guys are really smart. I love being your friend.
You too,
And
Ben.
You too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, look, are you guys both going to local U in Dallas?
No, I'm not gonna be
Sadly,
there.
no.
No.
No, bummer. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and Dallas is pretty close. If somebody had asked, I would have gone.
Yeah, it's
It's not too late. You can get your ticket.
perfect. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not the way I go to conferences, Darren.
Crash the party.
Well,
Okay, see
cool,
you guys.
guys. Again, thanks so much for your time.
You
And
bet. See y'all. And thanks for everybody for coming.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
well,
Bye.